goes to the cloud. Okay, perfect. This is recording.
So I'm just going to do a video that shows how to use the design safe detailed household and housing unit characteristics and actually replicate the code for a different county. So there's a number of related works that are of value to look at. So the Rosenheim 2019 article provides a background on the research and how this was put together, some of the science and motivation behind it. Other articles here are articles that use the housing unit inventory and allocation data. The data is meant, this process is meant to be run using Anchor, which is an open source tool that you can download and install on your computer. And this was done as part of the hazard reduction recovery center. I just switched here. There's two versions. There's version 1 and version 2. Version 2 has the link to the GitHub replication code. When you run the code that I'll show, you'll get in the end a data file and a code book. The data file is at the unit of analysis of block level census data. The files are large, but not too big, and the name here is housing unit inventory. The current version is 2. Future versions will come out that'll change this number. This is for Galveston County, Galveston, Texas, the 2010 census block data, and the data has a random seed of 1,000, which is important if you're wanting to run a Monte Carlo simulation. With this data, you might use a different random seed. The data has the block ID, both as a string or a housing unit ID and a block ID. The housing unit ID is made up of the block ID plus a counter for the number of housing units in the block. We have information, we have the track ID and block group ID, the county ID, and then information on the number of people, whether or not they're owners or renters, race, ethnicity, family status, vacancy, group quarters type, income group, random income, and then a flag for poverty. To see exactly what all those variables represent, it's important to look at the code book. Try to provide a code book that's attractive to look at and relatively easy to read. It has details about the project and a list of all the variables. And for each variable, it provides what variable type, number of cases. For Galveston County, there's 132,000 housing units, unit of measure, unit of analysis, some examples, and some notes about the variable. We'll skip over to some of the actual housing unit characteristics. So the variable name, the variable label is number of person records. See how many observations have the value. There's potentially one housing unit could have no people, and there's at least one example of a housing unit that has well over 1,000 people, and that means this is probably a group quarter, so a dorm, probably a prison, and this is the number of people that are at that location. And we have some notes about the number of people, tenure status. Not every house is occupied, and so not every housing unit has a tenure status. The code for tenure status, you'll see 1s and 2s in the data. So 1 is for owned or being bought, and 2 is for renter. Then we can see some basic summary statistics for this county. So in this case, you would say this county has 69% owner occupied, and 31% is rented. And then based on number of persons, then you would say it's a little bit larger for owner occupied and a little bit less for rented. A couple nice things to pay attention to in the code book is it also provides a link to the census data, and you should be able to click on this link and see the actual data from the census and where the data comes from. So let's go to the GitHub. Initially, this is going to take you to Zenodo, which is a way to keep track of versions of the data. And we can go to the intersect community data tree. This branch of the data is the version that I use to produce the results. There are newer versions that I'm working on. So if you check my actual GitHub page, you can see that there's a newer branch of the data, so an updated version. But we can use this version 2.01. The README file has some of the same information that's in the code book, some important acronyms, a key thing to look at for terms of use for census data. This data is not meant to identify individual persons, households, or other entities. And there's meant to be an uncertainty in this process. How to understand the file naming conventions. The data, when it runs, it's going to create a directory structure. So this is a little bit of an explanation of how that data structure, when you're looking at it, what to expect. To run this, you click on Launch My Binder. This could take a few minutes to launch. It actually is creating this in a cloud-based Jupyter notebook. Another option would be to download the GitHub data to your local machine and then use your own Jupyter notebook to run the code. And it is designed to also have that option. While my binder is loading, we'll come back. Another thing to look at is this report that's in DesignSafe. This actually provides some of the text from the journal articles that I pointed out earlier. An important suggestion for the citation, and I ask anybody who uses the data to use the citation that's provided, and also to cite the journal articles. So just some basic overview, key terms, and overview of the housing unit inventory. This is from this journal article, and you can kind of read through here and get a nice overview of the housing unit inventory and the housing unit allocation. So we see here that my binder does take a little while to run, and this will, I've done this many times, it does work, and we'll come back one more second. What we're going to look at once we get into my binder is the so I'm going to go back to the Zenodo link here and make sure I get into a version that is connected to DesignSafe. So we have, you'll see a workflow, which is a Jupyter notebook, and this is the file that we're going to look at in my binder. Gives an overview of the housing unit inventory, some instructions, overview of the program. And what we're going to do in my binder is just all you have to do is change the name of the county, name of your community, the FIPS code, and the county name, and you'll be able to run the code for any county in the United States. I think we're getting close to my binder launching. So it gave that error that it couldn't open the path. I see what's happened. So it's my binder. This is actually the first time I've done this. My binder is actually getting the newer version of the workflow, and the name has changed. So the correct is this housing unit inventory. We'll see if this is the right one. See, it's very similar to the other file that has a slightly different name. We're going to edit the data dictionary and run the code. And I just want to check what all this has done. Yeah, so this is the right one. So we're in my binder. We've got the Encoda 7AB1 run housing unit inventory version 2 workflow. I'm going to change this. So in this case, I want to do this for Orange, Texas. Orange, Texas, which is a county in Texas. Right now, I don't know the FIPS code for Orange County, Texas, so I need to go and use, there's a link here, but easiest thing to do is just go to Google and say FIPS code Orange County, Texas. You get this NRCS. There's a lot of different websites to get the FIPS code from. There's lots of Orange counties, and the FIPS code for Orange County, Texas is 48316. So this, what you use for the county name, these are flexible. They're more used for labeling and some of the output, but the FIPS code is definitely the most important thing. So if this is working, I'm going to go up to run, and I should just be able to click on run all cells. And I don't think doesn't look like it's run anything. I can't quite tell if it's actually working or not. Actually, one way I can tell if it's working, it does work pretty fast. It is working because the previous county I did this for was a different county, and this is doing it for Orange County. So it is working. Over here in the output data, we see that it's created a folder called Orange County, Texas. It's created a bunch of folders for the output data, the log file. We're downloading data from the Census API, so it's working through and downloading the tables from the Census API. It's already finished that step. It's cleaning up the data for the Census API. It's creating a base inventory. It's doing some random merges, so that's where it's working on right now, is the random merges. If we scroll down to the bottom, the log is very detailed and provides information about where the data is coming from and all of the different files that it's working through. And down here, we can see that it's still collecting some data from the census on income in this case. It's cleaning up the data, and it's it's going to take a few minutes to run. Orange County is not a large county, so this is should only take a few minutes. And you can kind of keep up with the log file if you're interested to see all the steps that are involved in this process. And it's slowly getting to the end. So it's actually completed creating the data file. So that's this Orange, Texas, and then it puts the final file in two places, but it's here is the file that actually has the housing unit inventory, and it's just made the code book. So this is for Orange, Texas. You could run this for multiple counties, so you could put in multiple counties and call it Southeast Texas or multiple areas, and it would combine all the data into one housing unit inventory. Orange County has 35,000 housing units, and similar to what we saw in the other data, we can see for the Orange County has 76% owner, 23% renter. And if we scroll down to some of the income, Orange County has around 16% of their population living in poverty. So those are some of the details. This data is not on your local computer, so you'll need to download the data to your local machine. And then once it's on your local machine, you can use it it'll be an option for your analysis. This is currently being developed to run more smoothly in NCORE. So one of some of these other files are in development and very similar, but some of the updates is all the code is in one single command line, and it also if you run this for say one community, it'll generate the housing unit inventory and automatically upload it to your NCORE account. And then we've got the building inventory, which if it's available in NCORE or something you would provide some details on that. And this the next step on this is to run the address point workflow and the housing unit allocation. So this is something I'm working on so that the entire housing unit allocation process can be run in one relatively short notebook using NCORE as the backend. Astura, do you have any questions?
No. Do you want me to stop the recording now?
No. What's your do you have any questions?
No. So can you like compute like also other variables for the housing unit, like the unemployed person or?
So that would be right now that flexibility is not immediately available, where you can choose your own variables. However, the code is flexible, and I'd be happy to work on adding new variables. So the code is actually based on this data structure for the inventory. So here is an example where shows kind of what variables are collected for race, Hispanic, for the ACS data by race, Hispanic. So this group quarters type. So this data structure is flexible, where if you know of a variable that's in the census data, whether it's decennial or ACS, then it's you can set up a new data structure that would be able to use the different tables. So here we can see like for tenure status for household is table H16, the different variables that are available and that we want from there. And then for each variable, this H16 would be the specific variable for owner occupied one person is H16 003. So If you have a variable that you want to add to the housing unit inventory, this would be, it's fairly simple in the sense that it's possible, but right now we would have to write the code for a different data structure, and then how we want to merge, how that data can be merged in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's possible actually.
It is possible, but it will take some editing of these files.
Because I was thinking like to compute the household level food insecurity index. So if I can compute that, so I can like do the optimization from the demand point as like household unit, and thus other point as in as the food pantry location. So
And
that
I
would be
would
nice.
assume that like household level, we've already got tenure status. We already have income and poverty. So something like unemployment would be another factor
Yes.
to include. Yeah. So that would be something to work on. The Census Bureau has a really good website for their census APIs. Unemployment would probably come from the American Community Survey. Probably we would want to use the 5-year American Community Survey for census tracts. The data ideally right now would be centered on 2010, so we would want to use the 2012 ACS. Next year, the census should have the 2020 data released at the block level, and they should have the 2022 ACS. So when we want to look at detailed tables and find a particular variable, I usually look at the HTML. This has got now probably 20,000 variables to look at. And if we want to say, find so the census has some information. There's 139 variables that talk about unemployment. So here we would want to look through and, kind of have a, this is all by marital status, school enrollment, so that it's possible to use multiple variables in here, but if there's anything by race or ethnicity, those would be some of the better ones to use. And then, this is looking at age and unemployment. So that, these would give us some probabilities for the chances that somebody is unemployed within a census tract or block group. And, that would be able to merge that in with the housing unit inventory data.
So I was thinking like to incorporate some of the variables in my food insecurity index from the social vulnerability index. So maybe unemployed person, age, and education level.
Yeah.
And other also, I'm sorting out other variables from social vulnerability index that can be incorporated in food insecurity.
So with the housing unit inventory version 2, that is at the housing unit level, and one thing that's in development is the population record file, and this actually produces data at the person level, and at this point, this is currently in development, but this is something that in the not too distant future, you can do this for the person level, and then you have information about the person's sex, age, race, ethnicity, and then we could also look at employment and issues related to education and employment. So this is in a future release of the public side. So this particular repository is just on my GitHub account. All right. So again, I recommend going to this project on DesignSafe to get a good overview, understand all the details of the method. We've got GitHub that has the access to my binder, and then you can run the code for counties within the US. Any other questions?
No, not for now.
Good, excellent.